So at Queen Mary, we knew that in order to create an agreement and commitment to our local place, we had to listen wider than to just the anchor institutions that are really relevant locally. My remit is centred on community engagement in East London and particularly Tower Hamlets. So I saw this along with the team, the public engagement team at Queen Mary, as an opportunity to listen to our residents, community groups, charities and organisations as well, who we already work closely with, as well as those who we don't also at the moment. So Philippa asked us at the Centre for Public Engagement to put together a proposal of what this could look like, to take to the principal and to get that senior leadership sign off, who are really supportive of this approach that I'm just about to tell you about today. So we've been working on this for over a year now, and we originally planned for us to now be at a stage where we might be finalising this agreement, but due to COVID, as with a lot of things, this delayed us and our communities a lot. So our communities were rightly all consumed with supporting each other through the first lockdown, and this wasn't the time to ask people to think about something else and work with us on that at that point. So we have just launched our East London listening campaign last week, and this will run up until mid-January. Lockdown 2 will have challenges for this participation. Not great timing that we launched this with the second lockdown, but we hope that those who feel that they can work with us will, and those who this still isn't the right time for can still hopefully be involved in the next phase, which I'll talk to you about in a bit. We also feel our communities are at a stage now with COVID where people want to think and plan for beyond a vaccine and for when coronavirus isn't taking over our entire lives, to thinking about our neighbourhoods and what people will need and want for each other and from each other. So how can QM play a part in the recovery of the place we are in, as well as address the wider societal challenges and the inequalities in our boroughs that COVID has enhanced and elevated? And I think it's important to link the wider civic work that we're already doing to those immediate needs that have been elevated and enhanced because of COVID. So phase 1, our next slide, if somebody can change that for me, that would be great. Thank you. So who are we listening to? So like I said, we want to listen wider than just to those anchor institutions who are very important and who will be listened to, but we want to hear from the people who live, work or study in East London, and we've developed a communications plan to help develop our reach into these boroughs. We've also mapped quite comprehensively hundreds of community organisations and groups across the boroughs who we'd like to hear from, based on the communities and residents that they already support, and a lot of those Queen Mary already have links and connections to, but also a lot of them we may not have worked with as much over recent years. So we want to make sure that the people that we listen to are representative of the people who make up our boroughs in East London, and we'll be using some data from our local authority borough profiles to make sure that we have that good spread. So the next slide, where are we listening? So as Philippa was saying, like in terms of our place in London, East London is in our kind of DNA and is our area of focus. So for us, East London is quite broad. So as you can see, from Tower Hamlets to Havering, but also we have campuses in more central London where we feel that we still need to listen as well. So we've also included the City of London and the surrounding boroughs of where our other campuses are in Westminster and Islington, and that's important to incorporate those communities as well for us. So the next slide, how are we listening? So we've got a three kind of pronged approach to gather the insight that we're looking for from our residents and communities and organisations. We're working with, so Queen Mary are members of London Citizens and Citizens UK, and we work quite closely with our local organiser, and we are working with him particularly on leading on some of this listening with us and using citizens approaches to gather that insight. So we'll be carrying out a series of one-to-one interviews with community leaders across those boroughs just mentioned, holding 6 online focus groups facilitated by London Citizens, just to ensure they're as objective as they can be, because like I said, we do work quite a lot with different groups and organisations locally, and we wouldn't want one of us in the room who does work with those directly to kind of sway or people might not feel that they can be as honest as they can be. And we're also running an online survey to gather more insight and to go deeper into those boroughs and residents. Next slide, please. What insight are we gathering and what are we asking? So we're focusing our questions on pressures and challenges locally that people are facing, and I think that we'll also see some immediate reactions to COVID within that, but also longer term, what are those societal challenges or pressures that we're all facing, and gathering insight on priorities within those, and the same for opportunities that people see in our boroughs where we live, work and study, what, you know, potentially new partnerships and working together on different initiatives. We've also got questions about priority setting London-wide, because we identify that some London-wide issues might be different to more localised neighbourhood issues, and the ways that Queen Mary can respond to these areas are what we're hoping to delve into as part of all of these mechanisms. Next phase. So that's our first chunk of listening, which is happening now. And next year, phase 2 will happen in spring, where we'll focus more on some of that analysis from the listening and bringing people together, other stakeholders, our anchor institutions, teams within Queen Mary and our senior leadership to start formulating what that can look like and what those commitments could be, which will be a really exciting time. And then phase 3, next slide, is hopefully we'll be signing and launching our Civic University agreement in the summer, with hopefully a great face-to-face celebration. We will see what the world is doing at that point. And I think that's really important to celebrate the great work that's already happening across East London and to kind of add these commitments into that. And phase 4 will then be working with teams across Queen Mary to implement some of these recommendations and commitments and to bring them to life with our communities too.